Hey everyone, welcome back to a new video. Before I begin on the stories, I just wanted to mention, if you have your own personal scary story that you would like to send me for me to possibly narrate here on the channel, you can do so by sending it to southerncannibal.com. So if you have a personal true scary story that you'd like to share, please consider sending it my way. Now that all that's out of the way, let's begin. At the time, I had just turned 12. I had never been left home alone before, and I was really excited to finally be home alone without adult supervision. I began the night by binging movies and playing games on the PlayStation, which my parents had bought me for Christmas. It was still very early in January when this happened. My town had been experiencing a harsh winter that year. It was snowing heavily outside to the point that if you looked outside, you wouldn't even be able to see. I had just put in a frozen pizza in the oven when the doorbell rang. My parents had always told me to not answer the door for anyone because they have a key and they wouldn't need to be let in. I was a curious kid, so despite my best judgment, I went to look out the peephole. However, when I did so, there was no one there. In all honesty, I just brushed it off as someone had the wrong house and left. The more I thought about it, though, the more suspicious I became. As like I said, it was below freezing and it was snowing outside. I went back to the living room to watch my movies. It's important to note that we had just moved in, and we didn't have any curtains in some of the windows, including the window that looked into our living room. At this point, I heard a loud bang come from the kitchen. I assumed something had fell, and as tired as I was, I didn't go see what it was. When I finally had noticed my pizza had been overcooked. I threw it in the trash, and when I'd gone back into the living room, I had then noticed someone looking into the living room. I pretended that I didn't see them and tried to discreetly call my parents. To the horror of my 12-year-old heart, they didn't answer. I tried not to panic, and I just went into my parents' bedroom and locked all the doors. I crawled under the bed and once again tried reaching out to my parents. When they did finally answer, I told them what happened, and they rushed home. But by the time they got home, whoever was outside was long gone. I have no idea who it was that was outside or what their intentions were, but I really hope they don't ever return. Hi, my name is Trevor, and this is by far the scariest thing that has ever happened to me. This happened in May of this year. I'm a 22-year-old male who's in pretty good shape, and I'm a first responder, so I've seen and dealt with pretty much everything. I live with my parents in an upper middle class community. The town I live in has very little to no crime in it. So here's my story. My parents left to go to Florida to visit some family, and basically left me and my German Shepherd dog alone for the week. A quick layout of the house. It's 2 stories, with my parents' room on the first floor. Anyways, it's night out, and I'm sleeping in my parents' room with my dog. The bed is between 2 windows with screens on them. They were both opened. It's about 2 a.m. and I'm just getting ready to fall asleep when I wake up to the sounds of screaming. I think nothing of it since there's a lot of kids in the area who are always out. But about 10 minutes later, I hear the same screaming again, which woke my dog up, and he was also alerted. I still think nothing of it. Another 10 minutes, the screaming happens again, and I noticed it wasn't a child scream, and it was only one person. It was a loud screaming, sounded like someone was getting stabbed. My dog starts huffing and totally freaking out. I'm now scared shitless and unable to move. 5 minutes later, and the screaming was right outside the window. It was so loud this time that my ears started ringing. My dog flips absolute shit, and I'm having a panic attack. I look out the window, and I see some old woman with long gray hair, and she was still screaming. I finally jump into action, and I grab my dad's pistol. The only bad thing is that it was a revolver, and it had no bullets, so I had to pray she thought it was loaded. I went back to the window, and now she was gone. I dialed 911, and as soon as the operator answered, I then heard the front door glass break. I ran over, and I see this old woman reaching into the window trying to unlock it. The scariest part of all of this was that her arm was rubbing right against the broken glass, cutting her very deep, but she wasn't even reacting to it. She was giving me the 1,000-yard stare while laughing and screaming. I'm literally crying at this point, and I had pointed the gun right at her. She sees the gun, and then just starts yelling.
Do it! I dare you!
And as much as I wanted to, I couldn't since I had no bullets. And then suddenly, I then see lights going down my street. The woman pulls her arm away and starts walking back slowly while still staring at me and laughing. I can then hear the cops yelling, "Drop the knife, ma'am!" The cops took my statement, and I later found out that she was actually a psych patient who had escaped the hospital, and that she even broke into a trailer nearby and stabbed a couple. The last I heard, they were okay, but why my house out of all the others? I had my door fixed and all the blood cleaned up. My parents later called me because they had heard that there was a break-in in the area. I had to tell them it was our house, but to not worry. To that crazy old bitch who tried stabbing me, I hope you're getting the proper care and help that you need. This happened when I was 15. I was visiting my dad for the weekend, as I tend to do often. My half-brother lives with them, and we're very close, and I consider him a full brother. We usually don't do much when I'm over at my father's house. We just hang out and have a good time. Me and my brother play video games in his room mostly, and this time was no different, until later in the story. Earlier in the day, my dad had some friends over, and we were all outside. We were playing some basketball in the back with all the adults. I had overheard my dad telling them how a few weeks earlier, one of his acquaintances came up to my brother's window and had tried to take out the new AC that my dad had just installed. My dad punched him a few times and injured his hand doing so. We all thought the situation was pretty funny, and we had a little laugh about it, and that was pretty much the end of it. A couple of hours later, everyone left, and we went inside while my brother put his dog in the outdoor cage. He usually stays out there for a couple of hours. Keep that in mind, because it'll be important later. That night, our dad had let us know that he was going to be going out for a few hours, and he gave us the usual spiel. Don't open the door for anyone you don't know. Remember to bring the dog back inside, and don't fuck anything up. And yes, those were his exact words. We gave him the okay, and he was off. Me and my brother were in his room playing some video games and watching some YouTube when the doorbell rang. Me and him just looked at each other, and I told him to go look out the window next to the door and see who it was. I continued playing the game, and I heard my brother open the door. So I assumed it was someone we knew. About a minute went by when I heard it close again, and my brother walked back into the room. I had asked him who it was, and he told me it was Roy. He was the one who my dad beat up. At that point, I was getting a little nervous, and I got upset with my brother for even opening the door for him after what he did. I was confused, and I had asked him why he did that. I had told him what happened, and his face then turned into a look of worry. I then asked my brother what he was talking to Roy about. He went on to explain that Roy had asked if our dad was home. Unfortunately, my brother said no, and Roy just left without saying a word. I can't blame my brother for telling him, because he didn't know at the time. My brother then ran to the kitchen and grabbed 2 knives just to be safe. We closed the bedroom door and we continued playing games. About 15 minutes later, we thought we heard some noises coming from outside. Now, we had the window cracked open because it was summer, and my brother's room always got boiling hot. We both walked over and then slightly peeled open the curtains, but we didn't see anything. We just blamed it on the paranoia getting to us, and then one of the scariest moments of my life then happened. The bag motion sensor light turned on, and the dog started to bark extremely loud, as if the barks were directed at something or someone. Me and my brother's eyes grew 10 times in size. Not only did we forget the dog, but there was something in the backyard. We knew it was a person due to the Roy situation, and the fact that it takes a lot of movement to activate the motion light. We tried to wait it out to see if the dog would start barking, but it didn't. So we then knew we had to go out there and get him. With knives in hand, both me and my brother carefully made our way outside. I was watching him in the door while I grabbed the dog. The dog was facing away from the house deeper into the yard where the light didn't hit, so we knew where whoever was out there was. Just as my brother got the dog untied and was about to run back inside, Roy jumped out from the darkness with a hatchet from my dad's shed, running full speed toward my brother. I screamed at him to look out, but he caught his arm, as my brother struggled to keep Roy from lowering the hatchet onto him. I then ran over and slit Roy's arm with a knife. He dropped the hatchet and then screamed in pain. Me, my brother, and the dog all ran inside and locked everything down. We considered calling the police, but in the end, we decided not to. It would just be one of those things that we always kept between us and no one else. But nonetheless, this is still one of the scariest things that's ever happened to me and my brother, and I really hope no one else has to experience anything like it. This is going to be a short but terrifying story, and it happened to me when I was 15. It still horrifies me to the very second I'm writing this. I was home alone one night during the summer of 2019, and I was doing my normal relaxation activities. You know, TV and video games. My parents were out on a date, and my older brother was at his friend's house, and I had no pets. I was playing Battlefront 2 when I heard 2 guys talking outside my window. My window was facing the backyard, so it kind of scared me. I turned off my Xbox and then looked out my window. What I saw made my heart beat itself right out of my body. I saw 6 guys in my backyard armed with machetes and wearing these weird cat masks, and they were about to bring my window with this giant rock. I grabbed my phone, ran into my room, locked the door, and then called my dad. I told him what was happening, but for some reason, he didn't even believe me. I was furious, so I then hung up on him and called 911. By then, I could hear the men in my house, and they were talking in a language that sounded like Russian. The operator then told me that the officers would be there soon and to stay where I was. She then told me to hang up, which I did. It wasn't even a minute later that I heard 2 pairs of footsteps coming up the stairs, and then to my room. They tried the doorknob, and when they realized it was locked, they then yelled something to the other men. They then started bashing at the door and kicking it, and then I think they actually tried cutting it open with their machetes. They eventually gave up, and I then heard a window outside my room opening, so I guess they escaped. I just stayed in my room when I then heard a man shout, "Police!" I opened my door and rushed downstairs when I saw 3 cops in my living room. They told me the place was clear and that it was safe. They called my parents, and this time they actually believed it and came home. The cops had actually told us that this wasn't the first time this happened, and that within the last week only, there had been 3 other incidents exactly like this. This only made me angrier with my dad, as since this had happened before, he should have believed me even more, but still didn't for some reason. I didn't talk to my dad for days before he finally made it up to me. Parents, please believe your children when they come to you with things like this. It isn't something to be taken lightly. So, about 4 years ago, my parents were going out, and with that, I was going to be home all alone for at least 3 to 4 hours. They left around 6 and they said they would be home around 9 to 12. Whenever they left, I went downstairs. I got some snacks and I had put on Netflix to then look around for a new show. After like 2 hours of watching a new show, that's when I then heard a very strange noise coming from the front porch. Keep in mind, I have a wraparound porch and there were a lot of windows looking out. Me being curious, I pulled back the curtains and then looked out into the dark yard. After looking around, nothing seemed off, until I saw a black silhouette of a man standing by the front door. I froze in fear, dropping the curtains, and then ran upstairs into my parents' room. After 5 minutes of waiting, I decided to text my parents. I told them the incident, and surprise, surprise, they didn't believe me, given that I was only 13. I sat there and I thought maybe it was my imagination. I decided to walk back downstairs and finish my show. I realized the motion sensor light in the backyard was now on. You can either turn the light on, or if anyone walks by it, it will turn on automatically. Keep in mind that this light isn't very sensitive. Most time it turns on whenever a person or animal walks by it. Once I realized what was going on, I ran back to my parents' room, once again in tears. I picked up the house phone to call the police, when I then heard a whisper from outside my window. "Hey, I know you're in there. Just come out. Come out here real quick. I just want to talk to you." My heart dropped and was about to beat right out of my chest. I froze in fear, then snapped back and called the police. The 911 operator told me to hide in a closet and to stay quiet. She told me to stay on the line just in case anything else happens. Also, keep in mind that my house is around 15 minutes away from the nearest town. After sitting in my parents' closet, I heard the back door creak. Tears started rolling, as I then heard someone walking around in the kitchen and living room. I told the 911 operator what was happening, and then I heard something fall over downstairs. Then I heard the stairs creaking, and a man walking around the bedrooms. Thank God I locked the bedroom door, because he saw it was locked, and just kept going. Or so I thought. Well, after around 30 seconds, I heard the loudest bang of my life, and with a man screaming. And like a miracle, right after this, I then heard police sirens, and the man running away, and then the back door slamming shut. I ran out, and I saw him running into the woods. I ran outside, and I told the cops everything, and then they took me to my aunt's house, where I waited at for my parents to come home. Ever since this happened, they never did find the man, considering we never really got any details on him. I pray and hope he never returns.